We know that the Old Testament feast cycle is prophetic, that it has spiritual meaning, because the Bible teaches us to view it in that way. No better place to go than 1 Corinthians 5. Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore, let us keep the feast of unleavened bread. So clearly, these Old Testament feasts are supposed to be teaching us spiritual lessons. The first is Passover. Pesach, as the Hebrews would call it, or Jewish people. That speaks of the first coming of Christ, as do all three of the first three feasts. And it is what occurred at the time Christ came at his first advent. Passover is Calvary. We now have a 7-day feast that begins, and 7 days is a life cycle, so it's telling us that we are to live in view of the one-time act of the cross, the one-time faith we put in that work, a life of separation and sanctification. Unleavened, to use the Old Testament metaphor. So unleavened bread comes next. Now, the third day, which is Sunday, as we would call it, is Firstfruits. And that is clearly the resurrection of Christ, and we go to 1 Corinthians 15 for solid biblical reasons to view the Feast of Firstfruits as the resurrection of Christ. So Christ dies and is buried and rises again in these first three feasts. Then what we have is a 50-day gap. So Passover is on a Friday, then there is the Saturday, then there is the third day from the Passover, which is a Sunday. We're counting 49 days plus 1 from the day before. That means that Firstfruits is a Sunday and Pentecost is a Sunday. It's the 7th Sunday after the Lord died and rose again. And this feast, which needs now to appear on the slide, Shavuot, as we call it, is a picture of something God is doing between the first Advent, feasts number 1, 2, 3, and the second Advent, feasts number 5, 6, and 7. There's 3 at the beginning and 3 at the end. First Advent, second Advent. What's happening in the middle? A solitary feast that's floating in this space between the spring and the fall. It's a summer feast. And it is the feast of Pentecost. So when the Spirit arrives on Pentecost, he's arriving right on schedule. Right on schedule, because this is the time when God takes 2 loaves, one Jewish and one Gentile, and brings them, both full of leaven, together to form a new entity. He breaks down the middle wall of partition, Ephesians chapter 2. He makes one new man out of these 2 people. So there was the Jew, and then there was the Gentile, but now there is the Church of God, which is made as a third entity, and it's represented by these 2 loaves that come together at Pentecost. Then there's an unspecified gap. That's interesting. Okay, what is that? That's the period in which you and I live right now. We're waiting for something to come. You say, well, we're waiting for the rapture. Yes, we are, but this is the Jewish festival. They don't think about raptures in Jewish festivals. They're waiting for the coming of their Messiah to the earth. Zechariah chapter 12, right? They're waiting for him to touch down on the Mount of Olives. They're waiting for him to come and destroy their enemies and to set up his kingdom. And that's exactly what the last 3 feasts teach us. 2 popped up together, that's okay. Trumpets, the regathering of Israel to their land, not the rapture. It's the regathering of Israel to its land. And then the Day of Atonement. I think Luke was mentioning the animation of the dry bones in Ezekiel 37 on the weekend. That is another swooping down of the Spirit and bringing life into a corpse and causing it to live and to rise up. That's the nation of Israel, regathered and revivified. And then finally, another 7-day cycle, which refers to a period of time. And that's the millennial reign of Christ, Sukkot Tabernacles. That's all we're going to do on the Feast of Jehovah.